money. What our plans were to be is, I had a few things I wanted to go over on what we've spent in ARP money this last 2 years, kind of remind what we spend on. And then we're going to open up to anybody who wants to speak that think, with any, if they feel they should spend this money on, or if they think we should not spend it on certain things. We're more happy to hear from that. What we're going to do is we have people that want to do that. Diane's going to take their name and if they're from a group, what group they're from, and then she's going to make a short synopsis of what they were wanting the money spent on. So I'll get started. First, if y'all remember, a lot of the Alderman do, and people here, we started with this COVID money and things, started in our 2021 budget. And if you remember that the governor came out with money to the counties and the cities. And we were supposed to get, I believe, in the neighborhood of $84,000. And what happened was the governor doubled that. The General Assembly doubled that. So we got that year, we got $169,000. We got about 1/3 of what the county got about 600 and something was what first supposed to be getting. And then they recalculated, and some bigger municipalities, the bigger cities, got some more money than the counties got, so they ended up with a little bit over 700,000 that year. So on the COVID money, if you look at falls, we get about 1/3 of what the county gets on the COVID money. So the first year we got 169,000. I think if I ought to remember, when we set those budget meetings, we had no idea what COVID was going to affect us. We delayed our pay raises until the first of the year. We decided to take that money and put it in areas that we knew we had to spend. We were going to do anyway. So that first year, if you remember, we bought 2 patrol cars with this money, and then we bought air bottles and an air compressor for the fire department. The air compressor was, how much was that air compressor? If you talk about 35,000, it's air that fills up the air bottles, and like I say, we were doing that. And what is a unit, air pack unit?
Air pack, they're around 1,700, I think.
Yeah, so if you remember, we offset and used that money. Later on, then they came with straight COVID money, which was about 84, and that was in the 21. That was in the. Was that this year's or last year's budget? That was last year's budget.
The actual COVID was 2021, and it was 94,000.
94,000. If you remember, that was the 94,000. You had to, at first come out, we had to spend it on COVID stuff. We could buy supplies. We could buy, and if you notice, if you've ever been in our offices, you notice both the utility department and the general administration office, we have the glass to the ceilings. We put that in using the COVID money. Later on, they came back and said we could use that money for the police payroll and fire payroll, and for first responders. We could use that for overtime payroll and everything else. We knew we had that scheduled. So we put the rest of that into that. So in essence, we were able to roll a little bit of money at the end of the year over, because simply we put that money into that line item they approved. That was approved to do that. So we put that in there. And then this year, they cut it in half. They cut everybody in half, and the county got about 300, a little over 300,000, and we got the 84,000. This year they did the same thing. We were able to take that money, and if you remember, the easiest way to take it was to put it in salaries for the police officers, in which we were able to do that, and that enabled us to release some of the money in our general fund. That helped us there. So that's kind of what we did with our COVID money. Because, like I say, we were afraid. We didn't know what our budget was going to be, but as it turned out, small towns didn't get hit that bad. Matter of fact, I think the 2 regions where we survived, a couple of reasons where we did better in local sales tax than we did was, one is internet sales tax, which affected the county considerably. It really helped the county, because I think wherever you live, and you buy something on the internet, that local sales tax goes to where you live, and it affected up and it helped us too. And then I think also people didn't go to Jackson; they stayed here and did grocery shopping here. I think that helped tremendously. And then if you remember, right at the time it started, Tractor Supply opened up. And the Tractor Supply did some, if you talk to them, they were pleased with their first year. They did some good business because nobody went to Jackson. Everybody was, that first year was going to Tractor Supply. Well, then the government, as you know, then the ARP money came out. And it came out, and with ARP money, we have really and truly 2 pots of money for us, the city, that we control. And then there's 2 pots of money for the county. We got 1.8, a little over 1.8 million on our portion of it, and I think the county got 3.35. And then on the TDEC, we call it TDEC, that's the wastewater and water. What it is, the state got so many $1 billion, and the state put $1 billion into wastewater and water for rehab, or water and wastewater rehab. And so we got approximately, we can use, but you have to submit your projects to the state to get that portion of money. The city we got 1.2 million on that. The county got 2.7 something, a little over 2.7 million. But if you take consideration, why the county, they did that for the counties. A lot of people say, you know, counties don't have utilities, why are counties getting that? Well, what they did was there's several, if you think, just in Chester County, we have 4 utilities that service Chester County with water. You have Adams, who services Enville. You got, Selmer services most of the southwest part of the county. And then even JEA comes in a little bit. They got a few places up in that area, where's it off Big Road? Needmore and that area. They got a few places, they have a few places here. And so everybody's technically eligible for that money on this county part. So there's like I say, it's 3 parts. Jim's the TDEC money, I'm gonna let Jim, on the TDEC money, I'm gonna let Jim and Daryl talk to you about that, because I think we need to get a good understanding of what dealing with depreciation and everything else. And I think Jim I'll let Jim handle that. That's a subject we really need to, because we've got to decide how much we really want to bite off of that, because it is going to cost us money. The 1.8 million, there's some guidelines that have come out that's made that a little bit more flexible for us. If y'all remember, I've emailed y'all the final guidelines, and if anybody needs those, we can get you a copy if you need them. The final guidelines, we're going to look at that. But one reason I've constantly said what the county was getting and what we was getting, it's really not going to be fair if groups come to ask us for the same thing the county's getting. Because let's be honest, we're getting, most time we got less than a third of some of it, and the ARP money, we got about less than half. So, on some of it. So it's really, I think we look at it as a city council, we need to look at, the appropriate. Because like I say, we're only 1/3 of the population in this county. And we are county residents, but we're also 1/3 of the population. So I think when we sit down and eventually when we sit down and start doing this, we hope we take that under consideration. But that is your call. That's going to be the city council's call, what we do. We'll sit, like I say, we'll have work sessions and y'all can look at it. And here's another thing, is like I say, we got to 24 to spend both pots. But we just be honest, I think we talked about it today, and I think Darryl will tell you, and so will Jim tell you, the wastewater rehab and the sewer rehab, we got to get on quick. Because I'm going to be honest with you, everybody's going to be trying to get contractors to do jobs and trying to get it done, because you have to have it obligated by 24, and you got to have the project done by 26. So and you think that's several years down the road, but y'all, we've dealt with, I think a lot of y'all know we've dealt with some of these grants. We're still, the multimodal is still out there, and we haven't done anything. We're still doing the multimodal. It's been, 2.5 years on the multimodal. So, it is kind of doing that. Also, we do have a Delta grant that we're in the running for, and that if y'all remember, we were applying for a Delta grant on water to run underneath 45, to put some fire suppression on the west side of 45. We got some at the Henderson stamping, and then we have another hydrant down down there at Edward Jones. But we don't have anything, if you remember, we don't have anything really good fire suppression going up to the the Freed Hartman camp. And there's a lot of people up there and our kids up there, and we need to get some fire suppression on the other side of that highway. And that's We applied for the Delta grant on that, and I think we got a good shot at getting that Delta grant from what we're hearing from Southwest Tennessee Development District. So that's about all I've got. I mean, I might chime in later on with something else. But I did, like I say, I did want to tell people what we have got so far this year in the COVID money and what it was spent on. I want to be one thing clear about it. You come to our office, you can ask us anything you want to ask us. We'll tell you what we spent, good, bad. You might not agree with us, but we'll tell you what we spend it on. Because 99.9% of the time, we vote on it right up here. That money's, we vote on it, and it's voted on this meeting what we spend it on. So at this time, if anybody wants to address the board, or address the audience, really addressing the audience, on what we should spend this money on, or what we shouldn't spend the money on, you're more than welcome to come up. And if any of the aldermen have anything they want to say, it's be good, about what you feel about the money or how we should spend it, please come up and we'll do it like it was just a public hearing. Because you have, as an alderman, you still are a citizen of the city, and you still have the right to say what you think it ought to be spent on. Then you can vote on it later. So, okay, I turn it over to anybody else who'd like to speak.
Go ahead.
Like I say, we'll let you what you want to now. If anybody wants to talk, if you want to, I'll tell you what, this is informal. So what we'll do, if you want to, we can let Jim get up and talk about the wastewater and water. And at the end, if somebody says, hey, I want to speak now, you're more than welcome to get up and speak. It's like this hour is informal. It's really it's your time. This is your time. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. We'll talk for just a minute. Of course, U.S. Treasury had some interim rules pertaining to the COVID ARP money. And that pertained to the 1.8 million that we're getting. And the initial guidance they gave us back in last year, I don't remember what time, basically restricted it very strictly to COVID-related issues. So you had certain, I don't know, 20 different categories you could spend it on, but it was all related to COVID somehow. And we've been waiting on them to make their final rules. They promised them in September, they promised them in November, then in December they said, oh, we may not have any. Well, suddenly last Wednesday, they came out with it. This is the summary, the overview. The actual guidelines now are 497 pages long. And with that change, they freed up and have given us the opportunity, in all small communities, county included, to claim one category as lost revenue. Even if you didn't lose revenue, you can claim lost revenue of up to $10 million. Our amount is only 1.88 million. And if you claim it as lost revenue, is that the category you want to claim, and that's going to be up to y'all, then you can use that 1.88 million for general government services, things that governments do. That can be buying equipment, that can be buying patrol cars, that can be doing things that we didn't think we could do with this money. We've been planning here for 9 months saying that we were going to have to, we were earmarked sort of, and we're looking at spending some money to renovate City Hall for COVID, separation, social distancing, for lack of a better word, etc. And we were going to spend a little money there, but the rest of it, we were sort of thinking we'd have to spend it on water and sewer in order, because it was a approved use under the interim guide. But with this change, it gives us a whole lot more freedom, the city a whole lot more freedom, and the county a whole lot more freedom on what they spend the money on. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying what we need to do on it. You still can spend it on anything COVID related. Now, this is not one size fits all. Bigger communities that got more than $10 million, this limit's $10 million, so it makes no difference. They can still claim up to the $10 million in that category and then spend the rest of their money on one of these other COVID. But as far as us, it gives us a lot of flexibility. So it makes it much easier on making decisions, and we can spend money on what the city really needs. So I'm happy about that.
Well, it won't make us prove that we had lost revenue, correct?
No, it doesn't. This is a blanket exemption. You don't have to prove anything.
I think
as
how
long as
they
it's under 10 million.
I think how it's put to us, we call it TML, we talk to TML, we talk to the comptroller. It's kind of like your taxes. We have that, what's it? You have your standard deduction. And they did this nationwide, and they came up with this 10 million nationwide, what the loss was. and it's just like your standard deduction you have on your taxes, you can claim the 10 million. Matter of fact, it streamlines our reporting. We still have to report what we purchase with the money, what we do with the money,
Right.
but it streamlines that. But there's some things you still have to jump through hoops if you try to do.
Typically, it doesn't lower anything you get.
No, you get the same amount, you don't
You get
lower
the
your
same
amount.
amount. You don't raise it, you don't lower it, it's still the 1.88 million, that's all we get of that block of money. As I said, you know, there's multiple blocks here. This is the money that's straight to the city, well, it actually routed through the state, but it was our block of money based on our population. So, that's good news. So,
That's excellent.
we got copies of that, or we can print copies of that, that's about 34 pages long, but I think that's what you sent to the board members, didn't you?
Yeah, I emailed you.
Yeah, so all the board members got
Yes,
those.
it was very hard to read on my phone, but I.
I know, I looked at it the first time on the phone, you couldn't do it.
Yeah, so that's one block of money we got.
Yeah.
Now, let's jump to this TDEC money, which is a totally separate pot of money. The state got, I don't know how many millions of dollars, billions of dollars, but once the state got that money, one of the things they decided to do with it was to put it into deteriorating water and wastewater infrastructure for the state, for all the utilities, both city utilities, utility districts, et cetera. And it specifically is earmarked for water and wastewater only. So you can't use, you cannot use this money and go do anything city-related or nonprofit or anything else. It is water and sewer only.
Okay.
We have in our name $1.2 million that is ours. Now, the comptroller was recommending that you use your other pot of ARP funds for your matching funds, because the city's matching portion is going to be 20%. So it's an 80-20 grant, basically.
Okay.
And so we got to come up with the 20% for every dime we pay. Now, the county money that the mayor mentioned, $2,795,000, is also earmarked by TDEC for water and wastewater. And we know the county does not run a water and wastewater system. The intent of TDEC, and that's a whole nother document here, of their rules on this money, that basically says, we want people to work together.
Yeah.
And we want governments to work together to determine the best use for this money. And so that was their intent for giving that pot of money to counties. Every county got a block, whether they had utilities. Some counties do operate a utility. There are some counties that don't have a city utility. It may be all utility districts. There's a lot of different animals here. Chester County is a little different than some. We got Henderson here. We got Selmer down, south and west. We do have a little Adamsville, and we do have a very small amount of Joliet. So really, the counties are supposed to be sort of the go-between to sit down with all the utilities that might be interested in getting their pot of money and working with them to come up with a project to help improve water and wastewater.
Right.
Now, all these funds that we read, everything in the rules state this is for deteriorating infrastructure, upgrading, etc.
No expansion.
Not expansion,
Okay.
unless that expansion serves, what was the word?
Underprivileged or underserved.
Areas. So it would be a low-income area or something of that nature. You might be able to get an extension approved in that case.
Even if, they're underserved by us, because you
Yeah.
just take
Normally when you see
all
her,
out in the west end of the county,
yeah,
they
when they're,
don't get any of our services.
yeah, when you say underserved, most of the time they're saying they don't have quality water from either a private source or another public utility. So if you've got undersized line, undersized pressure, violations, whatever, that's what I think really what they're looking at for
That's
underserved.
their definition of
I know, I'll just go ahead and say it, there's a discussion about going east, like there has been for years.
underserved. Yeah.
East, I don't think is going to qualify under these rules. Based on everything we've been told, running water east would not qualify for either group of these funds because of the area you're talking about, the income levels in those areas, and the good quality wells they have, private wells.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it totally couldn't, but based on everything we've been told thus far, that we don't think that's going to be the use. So, we're not ruling it out. We don't know if that's even bringing, I don't know if that's something the county will bring forward. We have no idea. They have not reached out to us. I think Barry did talk to you once or twice, just for information purposes, but I don't think, we haven't had a actual conversation about that.
So when you say we hadn't had a conversation, have y'all talked with Hutcherson? I mean, have y'all sat
I
down
haven't,
and discussed?
he hasn't come to us at all.
Or the commission or the?
I don't know what he talked to the commission about, so I don't really know. Anyway, so that would have to be I mean, for whatever the city would be interested in using any of this, quote, county money through TDEC for, there's gonna have to be a conversation with the county.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's gotta happen at some point. But right now, all this is new, we're just getting started in it, so that conversation will have to happen. And we'll have to look through different things. And, you know, they'll bring forward what their ideas are,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from there. Okay, back to the money though that's ours. Darryl, I'll let him talk to you in a minute, but this is one of those times that free is not free. You know, it's not like the commercial. She was making fun of the commercial a while ago and said free, 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 free. This is not free. They give you the money, but if you put it in utility infrastructure, guess what that dang word is? Depreciation. So the city will have to fund depreciation on anything that we take onto our system. And when you take on more depreciation in our water and wastewater system because of where we are right now in our revenue, Alicia, tell me what's going to happen. We're going to have a rate increase.
By law, you have to operate.
We have to operate,
Profit.
we have to at least break even. And we're just barely above that line right now in water and wastewater. We are every year. In fact, you're going to see the audit report here later at the meeting. In fact, you got one probably in front of you. If you look at sewer specifically right now, last year we didn't make much money at all. So if we take on water and wastewater funds to do these projects, y'all are going to have to know that y'all are going to have to raise rates in order to do that. In fact, I don't doubt that TDEC's going to tell you you have to raise rates before you get the money.
Right.
Because this is an application process. This isn't just a guaranteed thing. So, you know, when they see what we're asking for, they're probably going to look at our financials and determine. In fact, you've been working on a scorecard, and Alicia has, this week, that has to be done before we even get to the point of applying for this. So, with that, a lot of that is financial information of our last 3 or 4 years.
2018 to now.
Yep, so, yeah, they're looking at that. And they're going to make sure that your rates will fund the depreciation you're taking on, plus the maintenance and upkeep of the system, et cetera.
But if we chose to buy land, to perhaps in the future expand, say, a lagoon or something, they're not gonna make us, I mean, land's not depreciable. They're
Land is
gonna
not
make us raise
depreciable.
our
That's the
rates.
one thing you can buy.
So that's the
Do you mind kind of giving the history of water out east when it came to that revolving loan, which is, I think when we were reading this, we brought up that they kind of, we read it like it was like they were going to look at it like those revolving loans are.
Yeah,
You can tell that.
the rules say they're going to be looking at these projects the same way state revolving loan, which is a loan program through the state, from TDEC. And when we were looking at doing the Water East, how many years ago now?
It's 4 of them,
16 years ago or something? We were applying for the SRF loans in order to do that project. And we presented the project, we had the engineer involved, we went to them, we proposed, I believe I proposed at the time, in order to fund that project going east, we were going to raise rates 15% for every water customer, is what my numbers came up with.
They came back
I went to the state for the SRF, they came down and reviewed our financials. They said they wouldn't loan us the money unless we increased rates on water and sewer customers 25%.
Wow.
That killed the project.
Sure.
That was, I mean, it wasn't a go anyway, but that was the nail in the coffin, as the old saying goes, and did away with that project 16, 18 years ago, whenever it was. Just because of the cost versus the number of customers. Now, you know, in this many years, it has grown more than we projected. But, in the long story, it didn't get done. Now here you got, if you even go east, we don't need to hound on east, but if we're going east, you got to figure how many customers are out there, how many you're going to get to hook on. You got good wells, how much growth is there going to be? So it's a lot of things that work into that, even if it was an approved project, which I'm not sure it would even be approved. So, you know, there's a lot goes into that. But, long story short, if we were to spend all the city's money, all the county TDEC money, fund the depreciation on both pots and do whatever projects we decided to do, you would be looking at having to raise rates 10 to 15%. That's just a rough number. And that would depend on what exactly we do with the money and depend on the life of that asset. You know, some assets we have are 30 year, some 40, some 50. So it would depend on that, exactly what we do. So you can see free is not always free.
Yeah.
So the city council at some point is going to have to decide how much of this money for utilities do we want to spend? And how much are we willing to waste rates on customers to do it? Now, we already know one project that the engineer's already done, that's North Avenue. Is it from 4th? Yeah, from 4th out to what?
7.
Yeah, 4th to 7th. We already have that one engineered, ready to go. It's already been approved by the state, so it's ready. But where we waited on this to figure out about going to bid. Now, our biggest concern on utility is how much more is that utility expansion or rehab or pump station or whatever we're doing is going to cost us because of supply chain, lack of contractors, and how much longer is it going to take us to get it done. Because everybody statewide and other states too are doing exactly the same thing. There's a shortage on having engineering firms that has time to do the work. There's going to be a shortage of contractors, and as Darryl will tell you right now, he can't get pipe if he wanted. And he don't know when he could get it.
And it has to be spent.
It has to be under contract by the end of 2024,
Right, but.
and it has to be spent totally by 2026, December.
And that's not really that hard.
Not on projects like this. So if whatever we decide to do needs to be decided soon, where we can get these projects in the hopper because they're going to take some time to get done.
It's like they've given it, but they don't want you to spend it.
In a way, yeah. So,
And I know Darryl has told us before about wells and things we need to rehab. So
Now.
we're gonna have to spend some money.
yeah,
I mean, we've got to.
yeah. We're going to be spending it the next 5 years anyway.
Yes.
It's smart to go ahead and use this money.
Right.
Because you're going to deal with the same problems whether you're under the ground or not. You're going to deal with the same supply chain and contract
Right,
issues.
it's a whole, we're in the corner.
You have to appreciate that too, anyway.
Yeah.
To do.
Now-
We don't need to do that for North Avenue, to keep having to
Yeah.
tear up new pavement.
We did, when the last TML meeting, when the umpire, the comptroller spoke, several mayors hemmed him up, and I was one of them. We all hemmed him up back there, asking him, would he at least consider on the ARP money waiving depreciation? Because if he would waive depreciation on the ARP money,
Yeah.
it's a moot question. We could spend we've been trying to spend everything we got.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even talk to us about it. His philosophy, he told us that depreciation is a very, very small amount. I didn't agree with him, none of it did, especially in the small cities. But he wouldn't, but the comptroller will not even talk about waiving depreciation on the ARP money. It would make it a whole lot easier for all of us. It would.
Yeah.
If we started a project, it didn't quite get done by the end of 26, we spent most of the money. We're okay on that part, we only lose out on the part we don't
Don't
spend.
spend. I believe that would be correct. Nobody's actually asked that question that I know
I
of.
would love it asked.
Yeah, but I think you
Say it
said
again.
right to say that.
And I'll send it to Mike, send it to him tomorrow.
The question is, if you're start a project and are trying to get it done by the end of 26, and you spent a huge portion of it and paid the bills that have come in, you still lack getting it quite
You spent
done.
3/4.
Yeah,
You have to do the rest of the quarter.
yeah.
That's all, because with our.
I really don't
grants,
know the answer
we
to
are-
that.
Yeah.
We have, the current grant that we've been getting, like at the park, you commit to this and you have to spend
Mhm.
all of it. And if it goes over, you still gotta do that.
Mhm.
Are our hands tied with these funds?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. I would project you had to complete the project, but could you only get reimbursement for the portion you had to spend by December 2026? I don't know. I'll just answer your
Well,
question.
ask that question because you know how things get held up.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, I mean, we can accrue that we're gonna pay it, but that don't, if that doesn't count, then
Yeah.
we're in trouble.
Yeah. Darryl, I want to think you want to talk a minute about what projects you see the utility needs that does fit into the categories. I know we talked about each, which may not, but the things he's talking about all will fit into the categories of allowable use of the TDEC ARP money for utility at the 80-20 match.
So,
Darrell?
I think EPA's been talking about aging infrastructure and spending money on aging infrastructure since the early 80s. They had projects back a number of years ago that they wanted shovel-ready projects, and those projects couldn't be designed and built within the time frame that EPA allowed. I was in a meeting today with Jennifer Dodge. She is the director of the Division of Water Resources. She's over the group that will be reviewing these proposals and applications and things like that. I did have an opportunity to ask her point blank if the money could be used for system expansion or system extensions and all that, and she told me that no. And there were certain guidelines. If you had an area that was underprivileged, basically low income, things like that, there is some provisions for some monies in there, but I think they're going to kick in some state money in some of those locations. When you run a wastewater system, or even water system, there's no short places that you could spend this money on. You know, we have aging cast iron line, at a lot of the older streets in town. If you driven North Avenue last year, we had a little bit colder than we've had in several years winter, and so every time the temperature falls drastically, it gets in the single digits and then back up to 35, 40 the next day kind of thing. The ground shifts enough that that old cast iron pops like glass. It'll break straight around in almost a perfect circle, and you know that has to be dug up and has to be repaired, but the pipe right next to it is not any better than the part that broke. So it's still an issue. And then we have a number of lift stations that were actually designed and installed in like 1979, the one on 4th Street. Most of the older lift stations weren't really designed for what we see in the industry today is a lot of supposedly disposable wipes. They're disposable, not flushable. And we have a lot of those. When they get caught in the pump impellers, it'll weave that and look just like a mop head in the impeller. But what it is where they, a particular area has dumped a lot of those disposable wipes. Looking at our lift stations, anything, that was probably in the 79 is 4th Street. We've got Shaw up there is 1980. We've got a number of pumping stations that have been in service for right at 30 years. To replace 4th Street, 4th Street's got single-phase motors. They don't have three-phase motors. Three-phase motors are no longer available for that station, so we're having to run the risk of, we could be down on that station at any time. So we had a list of things that we were talking about, putting in the budget over time. But to replace, say, 4th Street pumping station, just not the wet well, not the inlets, outlet lines and things, just the pumps and the pump control package and all that itself, that's about a $50,000 item. And so just looking at the number of lift stations that we've had a lot of trouble with, if you replace half of those lift stations, you're looking at a price tag of about $375,000. If you replace all the ones on my list here, it's about $775,000. We're looking at, of course, the areas of town where we needed to upsize some line or change the way that the system was flowing now. We had we were already planning on replacing the cast iron water line on West Main Street. That estimate back when it was done is probably going to be 25 to 30% higher than this now, was $63,000. The estimate on North Avenue water line was $217,661. The water plant electrical most of it has been there since the water plant was originally built. They may have done some changing when they did the design, but it's probably somewhere in the 50s, 60s, a lot of the electrical is. And so estimate about $350,000 to do the electrical at the water plant. We've got a lot of aging sewer line. We've got a lot of clay pipe. A lot of it's got cracks and it's taking on a lot of water during the rainfall events and things like that. And right now, 8-inch is kind of what we have the most of in our system. And to go in and do a line or not dig up and replace, right now is about $125 per lineal foot. And so it's not an inexpensive process to do that. It keeps you from having to dig up the streets, and it keeps you from having to do a lot of extra expenditures when you rehab a wastewater line to reduce inflow and infiltration. And that's one of the areas that TDEC has told me themselves that they're going to really concentrating on is your dry weather flows at your facilities versus wet weather flows. And so if we did even 6,000 feet, which would be just a very small portion of our system, that's $750,000. And then, you've got an old cast iron line on other streets besides just north. And right now, the 8-inch cast iron, to replace that pipe, we're looking at about $46 per foot. And so if you did a mile of that out of the miles and miles that we have, that would be another $243,700 whatever. And just easily on my list, I've got a $2,042,438, and like I said, the prices are. Talked to a person today that they do the lining, and they said in the last probably 6 months that cost has gone up 25%. And it is really going up. Everything is going up in very short demand. Talked to a vendor just last week and was ordering some sewer materials, and they was like a 4-month delivery on like Firmco couplings. When you cut out a section, you've got to make a transition, and they're just a rubber coupling, but they said they're like a 4-month back order of those. So everything's like that. Meters, 8 months. When we ordered the skid steer, one of the vendors that was looking at that project or that piece of equipment was quoting 18 months, and they're quoting like 24 now. So it's going to be a really, to get this, everything really, when you do a lot of replacement and things like that, it's all got to be drawn up by an engineer. It's got to be stamped by a professional engineer. It's got to be sent to TDEC, their engineering section with the Division of Water Resources to be approved. During slow times, that approval process is about somewhere running about a month and a half. I look for that process to probably be 6 months with big projects. And that won't be, a lot of smaller systems like we have to use like a consulting firm or whatever. Places like, I guess, Jackson has the ability to approve drawings in-house. They've got a number of civil engineers, and Memphis and others have. So they won't be having to look at everything, but they'll be looking at a lot of utility districts, a lot of systems.
Just from a timing standpoint, with all that we have to do, how many of these projects do you think we could even attempt to get the engineering approved, to get the materials, get it done and paid for by December 26th?
I used to call probably 3 vendors within 30 minutes time, have them send me a quote, and within probably another 30 minutes I would have that quote. When I call a vendor today, they say, on quote, on pipe like we're getting, whatever, if I'm placing an order right now, this is the price. If you wait to order it till tomorrow, the next day, you need to call back and get another price. It's
Let's probably
changed.
even get a good quote, like.
And I've called on this, on a couple of these projects to get estimates on what it would cost to replace this or whatever. I've been calling people for almost a week and a half, and the voicemail is full of accepting any more messages. It's hard to tell anybody anything. And, you know, this happened, what, about 9, 10, 12 years ago. You know, they had all this money for infrastructure, shovel-ready projects, and they had a short timeline like this, and very little of that money actually was able to be, because it just couldn't get it in and out of the mill fast enough.
Sounds like we as all of them need to decide, okay, these are the things that, this is our priority list.
Yeah.
We pick this project, and this project, and start right away trying to do it. We're gonna do it anyway, we better start now.
But you will have to lead us on absolutely what is priority one.
Well, a lot of anything grant-wise, particularly the Delta project we've already applied for, and things, a lot of that has to go into, there's a lot of justification and wording and things like that, and so we need to look at the list, look at how much of this we want to bite off financially, and then prioritize our list and go ahead and get started in the process. So some of these items may be, you know, pumping station replacement, that may be a year and a half lead time.
Exactly. So we need to meet in a conference room with our calculators and, you know, and decide what we
I think
can
there's,
do
yeah,
and what we think we can get finished and paid for in that amount.
I think
We've
we've
got
got
to do it
plans for a work session
Okay.
in
We
February.
planned a work session. We realize that we have to go this winter
Yes.
we have to prioritize and go with the wastewater and water project. This is what we want to go with this winter and try to reach out to them. One advantage we might have, we hope we have, is we have a company that's in Chester County that does about 90% of all our work. They bid it out, and that's Travis and Roy Jones.
Right.
And we're hoping that, I'm sure they're gonna be busy, but I'm hoping is they're here and they really have to good care of it. We're hoping we will, because I think you're talking to them now.
Right. There's not any mobilization time. A lot of contracts and things like that, the engineering process and all that, it's all figured in. So if I'm bringing a traco from Knoxville into Chester County to do work, it's a considerable more cost. If I'm having to house people in hotels and motels in the area that I'm working, it's a considerable more cost. So they have the advantage that everything still has to be in.
So if we have to hit our customers, the clients, with a rate increase and do something, it needs to be something we were gonna do anyway. It's not undertaking some kind of expansion to benefit one section. This is gonna benefit everybody. And I think nobody wants a rate increase, myself included, but if we're gonna have to do the we're save interest because we're not borrowing the money, we have the money available, we don't have to worry about how do we raise it. It's stupid not to approve it.
How many lift stations do we have in the city?
Ballpark, I'm thinking we've got somewhere around maybe 15, 16. Most of those were after or right around there's several that's in the 1980s time frame. 4th Street's one of the oldest on my list, is 1979. And then there was the ones on Simmons were in the 90s. But, and even that, we may have a station that's not as old as the others, but if you're on Simmons Street, you've got one that pumps to the other one that pumps to the other one, and we've got a situation where we've got a 200-gallon per minute pumping station that's pumping into a 200-gallon per minute pumping station, plus all the housing that's been added to it since the thing was built. So, and compounding that, and the reason a lot of cities are really looking at wastewater, I&I, because that's going to reduce the amount of energy you use for pumping. It's going to reduce the wear and tear on the pumps, and it's a replacing an aging pump that has to run a lot more hours to pump the same amount of volume type thing. Plus, in the new permit renewals, you have to report overflows. And so if you have a lift station, it gets stopped up with rags, it overflows on the ground there at the lift station site, you have to report that every time it happens. And if it happens more than, I think it's like 5 times in like a 6-month or a year window, then you have to start sending letters and things of how you're going to address it and how you're going to fix it.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark or Jim? I'm sorry. I got that history lesson on, one session from Mark. I apologize, Darren. I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm not going to speak to the public, but I want to know, the county's talking about spending money to build a well, the county's talking about spending money to build a well out Jacks Creek area. Who has to claim that depreciation if they
We
decide?
will. Utility department.
We got it.
So y'all don't have to agree to do it though, right?
Well, this board, our utility, we don't have a utility, we have a utility board and it's a city alderman. The city alderman, at the end of the day, have to decide what they're gonna take on and what they're not gonna take on.
Okay.
That is this 6 people's decision, what they take on and what they don't take on.
Just because they want to do it doesn't mean
And then, and this, I'll be honest with you, this is not gonna be an easy thing for them, I'll be honest, because they're gonna have, and even with this other money, 1.8 million, that we have that flexibility, they're gonna have to prioritize what they feel is, we've got things like where we are, I'll just be upfront with you, Jim can tell you this, we'll know, y'all will know it today when you look at our sanitation. That's an enterprise business, our sanitation fund, that does the pickup garbage. It's cutting it close each year. And we're cutting it close this year. And we've got to get a garbage truck. This is a year we got to get a garbage. We got to get a garbage truck. So, there's a lot of issues sitting out there. What you want to do, and how much do you give to nonprofits? How much do you give to nonprofits? And I can only speak for myself about this one. That's the reason you notice when I read this list, I let them know the difference of what the city got and what the county gets. And that's not just here, that's across the state, Tennessee. I'll be clear, the county, and I know that if you're in the 1st, 2nd district, I'm not trying to hammer you too much, but every time we have something, the 1st, 2nd district commissioners always say, how much the city gonna pay? The reason why, because every dollar they save themselves, every dollar we pay, the dollar they save themselves for their people in their district. I understand that. That's how this works. So the old 50% match by the city, I just don't see how we can do that. I don't see, because with the money we're talking about, and ours are only about half, a little less than half of what on the ARP money. So, but that's another issue. But that's the 6 aldermen. They have to sit down there, and that's the reason we're trying to flood them with as much information we can flood them with, so they can at least make a decision on what they want to do. And I'm sure, and I'm pretty confident. We got a couple of department heads here. I'm pretty confident the department heads will be coming in the door telling us what they need. So I'm pretty sure that will happen. I can see them heads getting nodded right now. So.
And I want to see y'all know what you need. I do. But let me say this. I want us to look at this money, this almost $1.9 million. I want us to look at what can everybody see from it. You know what I'm saying? Because we've discussed this, the moving the farm, or expanding the farmer's market, moving it. I mean, that's something everybody can see. That benefits everybody. We've talked about things at the park. We've talked about, and one of the things that has rolled around my head, I didn't know you were going to be here tonight, but it's in your neighborhood, and I don't know how we would maneuver or get it, but Vincent is an historical building.
It is.
So if there's some way the county and the city could work together to make that a community center.
I would love
I mean, I didn't know you were going to hear that. But that's just, well, and that's one of the things I thought, this is money that we could never have had. Let's, the regular walk-a-day, work-a-day citizen walk through here and see where, okay, COVID was a horrible thing, it affected my family, whoever. Joe says, I had somebody die from it. Wouldn't I love to see that my community has used that money for everybody instead of a few? Now, for water, that's for everybody. That's everybody, and clean water and quality water is a high priority, absolute. Safety is a high priority. But then there's some nice things that we might like to have too.
That's gonna be up to y'all, that's gonna be up to
I know,
y'all, how
but
much,
put
how
it out
much,
there.
that's up to the city alderman, how much do y'all guys want to put in this thing? I mean, how much money is this 1.8? How much you want to put here, and I mean, that's gonna be y'all's decision, tell us what, y'all gotta tell us what to do. I guess as Jim would say, y'all tell us where the ship's gonna go, and we gotta try to steer it there.
Right,
Good thing about it, we don't have to appreciate it.
right.
That's the advantage. And I'll be honest with you, Jim and I, and I have to admit, when we read Rule 1 on the loss of revenue, that's huge to us. We saw that really gives this board a lot of flexibility to do something they want to do. That gives you a lot of flexibility there. And I'll be honest with you, I don't see very few cities not taking, small cities like our size or less, will not take advantage of that. It's just too easy to how to report. You streamline your reporting, and you still, like I say, you still got to show what you're spending on. You still got to qualify, but you can really streamline your
Yeah.
report.
The advantage is with claiming the revenue loss of the 10 million exemption is, you can spend it on a lot of those other things that would have qualified under the code rules,
Right,
but you don't have all the reporting requirements.
right.
So you do all them under government
Yeah.
operations anyway. So it's the simplest
And
thing
it's
for any
things
community to do.
wouldn't have spent money on before because we're always trying to save money for the rainy day. So this is our opportunity to do some absolute things that we have to do, but maybe some nice like-to-haves too.
One thing the comptroller has said, and he said it every time we have a meeting, he brings it up, is not try to use this money that you're not gonna have reoccurring costs in your
Right.
city or your county.
Yeah.
In other words, is you go do something, and all of a sudden now you got a maintenance of something, you gotta maintain and do maintenance of something, and you gotta pay for it. That's one thing they've asked us. We still can do it. And I mean, we still can go do something we have to maintain, but that's your decision, you know we're gonna have to do that.
It's not a recurring expense.
Right.
Yeah, but even if it is, we can do something that's a recurring expense. You know, when we do the budget each year, we got to budget that recurring expense. But so long as you know that before we do it and understand that we're going to have to do that.
That's why we, it's gotta be careful about any salaries or anything like that.
Well, I think, the things that you cannot do, it's not changed, it's still not changed. One is you can't lower your taxes, use it to lower your taxes. Two, you can't use it to your pension plan. You can't help fund your pension plan. And third one, you can't put it in your rainy day fund.
Sorry, Keith.
But if it saves us some money in the budget, we might.
You can do things, Keith, you can do things to keep you from raising taxes, Keith. You can do things to keep you from raising taxes. So, I mean, this is, now, and also too, the advantage, we have a little bit, the time frame on the 1.8 is a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, we said this, you can allocate X amount this year and have the other group of money set for a later date. Because you don't know, next year you got another project you want to do that you didn't know was on your radar until it comes up.
So
So
1.88 would be that's perfect, right? Because something might die on us that we gotta spend in the coming year. Now we've got some built up.
and also if projects getting done somewhere, we have to come in and help finish the project.
Oh.
That too. But
You've seen that happen, we've done that before.
But I'm saying,
That'll always happen.
something could happen that we would
Well,
need something.
let's do this, we still got a few minutes left, and even if we have to push it back, that's fine. I asked people if anybody wanted to speak, and we didn't get anybody. And what I asked when I first got, like I said, come in, if you had anything you thought we should spend it on, please come up and tell us what you feel like, we'll take your name, and she's gonna take it. Or if you think something you have, it's just a bird in your saddle, and you don't want to spend it on, could you more than welcome to come up and tell us that too? So.
I would just like to say thank you to Jim because he explained everything so well about this water, wastewater projects. Because discussion was held at the county commission meeting on Monday night about the possibility of expanding east and the county being involved in wells and expansion and all that. And I was going to ask those questions, but Jim, you answered my questions.
Well, I think based on what we've been told, each project expansion would not qualify. And of course, let's face it, if you took the entire amount the county's getting, the 2.795, there's a 20% match on that. So you got a bucket of money, so I can't do math in my head anymore, I've been using calculators before, but let's just say $3.25 million laying there. Each project to do it right, you're probably, Darryl, correct me if I'm wrong, before you get done with tank, pumps, etc., that probably wouldn't touch it. To do what you're thinking might get done. Could you get a system where you got one pipe out the highway and a little expansion? Maybe. But you want to serve, if you're going to serve an area, you need to figure on serving an area. But still, I don't think it'll qualify for this pot of money. But if the county is serious about doing that, they need to go be the one to go to TDEC. Then they're going to come to this city board and ask this city board if they're going to be willing to take on that depreciation. And they're going to look at number of customers, what the rate would have to be, et cetera, to determine whether it was even feasible to consider.
How many customers do you think the East would take in?
I really and truly at this point do not know.
I know by the last few years, we bought and put 4 houses out there.
There's a lot.
If I could have hooked up to city water, I would have done it on all 4.
I think we all say that if we had been able to do the East project when they looked at it 16 years ago, it would have been a lot more feasible project, because they didn't know the growth was going to happen. And I think we all talked about that, it happened then. But the only problem I see with it is good well water, and what percentage will I get, or what do you have to offer to get them to hook on? Do we waive tap fees? Do we waive things like that to try to get people to immediately hook on? You do the 6 month no tap fee? I don't know. I mean, that's things this utility would have to do.
There would have to be a survey taken for anybody out there. Would you willing to hook up?
Right.
Well, they do one of those, you'd have to do one of those.
And it would probably be a lot of people out there would hook up if they, I know there's a lot of subdivisions out there would be open today, or really would go, if they could get out, put out a well.
Right.
So you're talking about 6, 7 grand.
Here's the question that, this is what killed it years ago, is people that live here in the city of Henderson. A lot of people that live in the city of Henderson know what their water bill is, and they're looking at being in the 10 or 15% in, well, they were talking 25, and that's what killed it up here. He was on the board when they came to that 25%. The rest of the aldermen, they cut it out quick, because they saw the depreciation and everything else getting raised up on the rates, and they wasn't going to charge those to the city customers. So that's an issue too.
But
Do
Jim,
the city
you
customers, if you ask a city customer who lives on Crook Street, are you willing us to run water out east? Well, we're going to have to raise rates 15%. I don't know what their answer would be.
Why would you have to raise it for the city?
You could
across the board.
you'd have to rate them all the way across the board. We have that special rate in Deanburg.
Yeah.
We do have that special rate in Deanburg, because it is, but it still doesn't cover the cost of that project. And that was when the water was so bad out there.
And they had, if Deanburg had bad water and everybody out there was gonna hook on, and they could get it.
Yeah.
And you go east, you're gonna pass a lot of houses that's gonna sit there on that well till it dies.
Right.
Then they wanna hook on, but that could be 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and you're getting $0 and you can't force them to hook up.
You know, one of the problems we have out west, people wanted to hook up so bad, they run private lines 2,500 feet
Yeah.
to hook up to water. Well,
So,
how many, where you lived on Hill Street, how many meters do you have in front of your house? Not Mill Street, when you lived on Hill Street down there by Paul Melton, how many meters do you have in front of your house?
Not any.
No, you had, all the people run them up there. Paul, everybody
they
had.
have the pump stations for
I
sewer.
had to put my own stuff up there and
For sewer, I think it was sewer.
Sewer, but there's water lines, several water lines, because I remember
Yeah.
Paul, they didn't run him water, so he ran all the way up to the city limits, hooked on to the city limits. Back then, until Eddie got here, we're kind of digressing, but until Eddie got here, the city wouldn't run outside the city limits hardly any. And we got people who's got, like I said, we got places in town, people got 2,500 feet worth of private water lines.
Well, state law requires that any expansion done has to be feasible. And so somehow you gotta look at east or any other expansion you have and determine the feasibility of that project at some point in the, now it's not gonna be day one, but you gotta figure, in 30 years, this project's gonna finally break even or something. And, it's gonna be tough out east. And if you do have a special rate out east, that's even gonna discourage more people from hooking up because that rate's gonna be so much higher.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of how far can you go with rates before you start losing customers on the other side. So, I think there's a lot of discussion out east. I'm sure it's gonna happen, but it's gonna take some discussion with the county and TDEC. And, TDEC may say, no, that's not gonna fly, we're not gonna fund it, and that's the end of it. If they say, yeah, it might, or it could, then we may have to go back and actually have more discussion. So, and that's gonna be a problem. Right now, I think TDEC, I don't think we're gonna even have an opportunity to apply for the TDEC money till April or May.
April, May, they said
So
they
it's gonna
pushed
be
their
that
guidelines back to April or May, before they even apply.
If you're going to Jackson Creek, you gotta go off of the main highway to figure out where your customer base is. Where do you go?
Yeah. Do you go north side or south side? Which one? Yeah. Anyway.
We got to address the water, but I want, one thing, I want to say, I appreciate your compliment, Jim, but I do want to say this, that we called Nashville, and the day we found out that we could go up this $10 million deal that we could just claim that without having to do it, just claim it. We called Nashville and talked to Tim, they hadn't heard about it. They called the comptroller hadn't heard about it. Jim found it that day, we're calling everything else, and I get a phone call that Sunday afternoon from the TML director, say he just got off the phone with the comptroller and said the comptroller says that he reads it the same way we read it. So Jim, I have to admit, when this stuff comes in, Jim reads it. As soon as he hits the door, he's reading it, and I get a lot of discussion on it over my head, especially because of appreciation stuff. So, but Jim did a great job on this one. I have to admit, he did a great job staying on top of that.
He not only reads it, he comprehends it.
That's
That's the key right there.
He did a great job. All right, this time.
I just want to say thank you,
Sure.
thank you so much for having this meeting tonight and opening it up to the community, to hear and to know the great things that are available to our community, and we support it 1,000%. I also want to say that from the seat that we sit with Oasis Community Development Corporation, we would love to collaborate with the city and county on bringing, as it was stated, some niceties to all of our areas. I know we have representation in all of our areas, but some things are lacking. And so we would love to have the consideration of the community center in the community where our children can go and be further taught and have other things needed there to satisfy and to put a smile on their face. Hey, we got a place we can go and play and possibly put a pool in the back there that they can go and swim. And just those kinds of, I would love to see that happen and would be willing to help garner the supportive funds to make it happen.
I was hoping that Terry Bell would be here tonight. Terry has got something he's got, and I'll be honest with you, I've read it, and it deals with Vincent High School, it deals with Carl Perkins, it deals with the whole school, it deals with the property out there too, but he sent an email to Troy, the superintendent, and I was hoping after he got the deal, he's got something he wants to bring forward. So it's.
Well, I would love that. It would.
He's got something. He's got something that Terry's looking at the county, and he's looking at something, and he's got his idea is a multi-purpose. And so, and he said to me, and I thought he was gonna be here tonight, I hope, he told me he would, but he, remember, he got COVID, so.
Oh,
He couldn't make it to meeting Monday because he had COVID, so, but I was hoping he would be here, because that's a project that Terry is looking at with, that involves the school system, involves several groups, have to be in play there. All right, at this time, we're 7:06, we'll start our meeting in about 5 minutes. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate everybody coming. You stay for our meeting, and you can hear our audit report. We got our audit report tonight, you can hear that. This time, first item on the agenda is item A, our minutes. Is there any corrections or amendments to the minutes?
Jim, I had one in some case A3, and I just didn't know about, is yours new Dodge? Is it a pickup truck, Gary?
Yeah, no, the,
I didn't think it was.
yeah, we got a pickup truck ordered, but the new car here is a Charger. It's a car.
Okay. Well, look at Police Chief Davidson reported that it was ordered and arrived this week. And it says, was not sure of the time of delivery for the pickup truck. That's a separate. Okay.
I can clarify that sentence if you'd like, but.
I mean, it's not a big deal,
There's a
but
Dodge Charger, which is the marked unit, and then there was a pickup truck for the drug officer, and that's what
That's-
Gary basically said, was the Charger was in, and the pickup truck was, he didn't know what the status of it.
right, okay. Well, it doesn't matter to us exactly, but one of those years, somebody will look back.
We only ordered it in June, last June.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
You have no idea what it's gonna be.
yeah.
Are there any other corrections or amendments to the minutes? No, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Have a motion to approve the minutes with one correction. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. All opposed signify by no. Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is accounts. There's no vote. There's no vote needed on accounts. If you have any question on our bills, please give us the page number in the line item.
I just have a question for Gary again, but the line item is 67 on B2. It's the upgrade on the camera for live viewing.
That's, that, when Cleveland was here, he built a camera that we used at the ball games and we carried it around listed. But all it did was had a DVR and could sit there and record. We couldn't monitor. We would have to get the CD out with a bucket truck to get the recording down and stuff. And so we took it to Fleet Safety, or not Fleet Safety, Skycop in Memphis. They converted it to a SIM card so we can put it on our computers from our cars and stuff now and get it live. And it's the one that's down at the city park.
Okay.
So it was converted, that's what that was.
That's what that one, okay. Seemed like I had another one, and I can't remember the page. It was, did you get your card details, your new card? Or all your wraps on it?
We got everything except the equipment on it, and they're waiting for a cage and something else to come in. Once it's here, we'll deliver it to Area Wide, they got the lowest bid on it, and we'll carry it there and they'll start putting stuff on.
Okay, that was the question I had.
Any other questions? Okay. Next item is item C, delegations. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board on any city business or issue they have with the city? Please come forward. Okay. We do like to recognize that we do have the Chamber's leadership group here with us tonight. I'd like to say welcome to y'all. Next item is item D, is to hear a report from Alexander Thompson and Arnold on the June 30th, 2021 audit report. Matt Wood is here with us. If Matt's going to come up and go over our audit with us.
My name's Matt Wood. I'm a partner with ATA out of our Jackson office. Had the opportunity to get to share your audit this year, and I want to just go over a few highlights of it. First, it is an unmodified opinion. What that means in better terms is it's a clean audit opinion. It's free of material misstatement, any evidence of fraud that we could find during the audit. We had no internal control findings as well this year. And even we would have a lesser thing we could do, which is communicate to this board in a management letter, items that we feel like should be addressed, seen, but don't rise to the significance of being an internal control finding during the audit. We had none of those items as well. Thanks to Jim, Felicia, their whole team for working with us. COVID has made a couple of interesting years being an auditor, coming from the outside and trying to go week to week to different parts of the state. They worked with us quickly and efficiently, got us in and out, and we were able to do the audit. I'll flip through a few pages of the report, a few items we want to highlight here. Page 7. So this is the management's discussion analysis. It's really the only place in a governmental financial statement where you are able to compare year to year. Everything else in the financials is a one-year statement, so you really don't know what a number means because you can't compare it to the last year. So on page 7, the very bottom of the page, I just want to point out a few things. So this presents your governmental activities and your business type activities. So it takes every fund of the city, and in accounting terms, it changes it to full accrual. For better terms, it takes the general fund and puts your fixed assets and your long-term debt and whatever else is not reported in the general fund, and puts all of it together in one place in the financial statement. So on this page, you're able to see the governmental activities and business type activities. You can see the current assets there increased by just over $2 million this year, the city as a whole. Our capital assets decreased by about $600,000, obviously mainly related to depreciation expense. Deferred outflows and inflows, those categories mainly are related to one, the next year's property tax levy, and the rest of it's really your pension and OPEB related accounts. Those accounts don't fluctuate a whole lot from year to year right there. But what we want to pay attention to, and what is a good number, the very bottom of the page has unrestricted net position. You can see it for the governmental activities, raised just under $800,000 from the last year. Unrestricted for the business type activities, raised just at $1 million. So there's a few things to those categories. When our capital assets go down by depreciation expense, that brings our unrestricted net position up because there's a restriction on net position related to our fixed assets. It basically says, hey, we've got all these assets, but these are sitting in property. We can't go get it. We can't go get it quickly to get cash out of it. So that unrestricted net position number is what you want to pay attention to. $1.7 million increase, city as a whole. That's a good thing to see from year to year. Flipping over one page to page 8, same conversation. This is not just the general fund, this is all of our governmental activities. What you will see in these kind of funds, if our expenditures stay pretty close year to year, really the only big change you're going to see is our grant activity from one year to the next being a little different. So if you kind of look up in the middle of the page there where it says operating grants and contributions, very similar to last year, 288 versus 283. Capital grants and contributions, you can see just a small increase, I guess, $100,000, whatever small is to you, I guess. $100,000 increase in capital grants and contributions. So all that boils down to the bottom of the page, a change in net position, about $1.5 million. As stated, you monitor your expenditures monthly. You know kind of what the budget is for all these funds. Grants usually is what swings that change in net position one way or the other. And we had a good amount of grants this year we'll talk about in a moment. So go all the way to page 15, if you will, with me. I know this is kind of the pages that you deal with more on a monthly basis. You care more about what the general fund, sanitation fund, and our business type proprietary funds are doing, rather than maybe the government-wide financial statements as a whole. So you can see these, you can see the assets, nothing really standing out from prior year. I do want to point out a figure. I present to municipalities all over the state of Tennessee. In my career, I've been thankful enough to audit everything from Gatlinburg to Olive Branch, Mississippi. It is hard to compare one city to the other. If you get into Middle Tennessee, it's a totally different ballgame than some of the small municipalities I audit in and around Jackson from time to time. But there's one number across every place that I like to present. I look at unassigned fund balance of the general fund here, $2.85 million. What I compare that to is your budgeted expenditures. It's what you say on an annual basis you're going to have to spend out of the general fund. And this unassigned fund balance number is what we say we've got available to spend at the start of a year. I take that percentage, which for the city of Henderson is 43.43% in the year 2021. Anything over 25% is considered a healthy city. Y'all are one of the largest percentage-wise, and what that speaks to is not an excess of cash or an excess of this or that. It means you're monitoring your expenditures, and that's what we want to look for. When we monitor our expenditures, it allows us to have freedom to take on projects, to take on emergency purchases and other things when they come back. So that's a number to pay attention to. If I present your audit report next year, you're going to hear that percentage from me again. So good thing there. Flipping over to page 22. Here's your water, sewer, and gas fund. This is the statement of cash flows. We can look at the income statement and others in a moment. But what we look for in these funds is what the cash increases. If you were a municipal electric and TVA was monitoring us, they want a certain percentage of cash all the time because there's an expectation that eventually we've got to replace plant when it comes to these proprietary funds. I think I've heard that conversation somewhere tonight already. So what we want in these kind of funds is to have the funds available, the resources available to start down that road of replacing plant. So why I showed this statement of cash flows that water and sewer increased $500,000 in cash, gas increased with over $600,000 in cash, and we did that with only new debt of $87,000 this year. That's something that we look for and that we want. Because I can look at an income statement, and as you said, depreciation expense can make an income statement look a whole lot of different ways. But whenever we look at the statement of cash flows, usually it shows a better version of what our activity actually was this year. But you always want to take debt out of the equation because cash can go up a whole lot in a year if we increase by debt. But it's a good thing there as well. And I do want to point out one page, page 32. This is something to pay attention to. I won't say it's a great worry, but it is something financial-wise we need to pay attention to. I won't say work on here. So this is the income statement for the sanitation fund. You can see an ending fund balance there of $108,000. If we look back to the balance sheet, you'll see a number that's not pointed out in bold letters, but you've got an assigned portion of this fund balance. I believe it's $62,700 off the top of my head there. That is next year's budget, the 2022 budget, which is already passed. That we have more expenditures than revenue related to. You had $180,000 this year, so that's a less number in 2022 than 2021. Obviously, we cannot budget a deficit when we don't have fund balance to match up with it. You currently have 107 that we've borrowed 63,000 against. So obviously, 2022 has to address it somehow, whether it's lessening the budget, whether it's finding another revenue source, finding whatever way to increase that. It's just something to pay attention to. It's not a 2022 problem as far as financial statements, as far as I know today, but it could be a 2023 problem when you get to the budget. So it is something to pay attention to, at least financial-wise. I'm going to go all the way back to page 44, if that's okay. We're going to talk about debt for just a moment. Few pages in a row here that we're going to talk about it on. I like to just show kind of what debt changed from one year to the next. But also here, I think it's important to note that we've only got a few years of actual debt payments scheduled out right now. That 2029 there on that schedule is the ending year of some of these debts. That's something to pay attention to. Good thing there that debt's running out. But on the next page, on page 45, this is the first time, it's not the only time in financials, that we're actually able to see from year to year what happened. And you can see the notes payable there. We increased by $75,000, but we made $97,000 worth of payments in the governmental activities. I think it's in the debt service fund. In the business type activities there, we took on $87,000 of debt, but we made $275,000 worth of payments. So both, as stated earlier, we've got about 8 or 9 years worth of payments left. That's a good figure. We don't have 30 years of debt hanging out there at the moment. So let's flip over to page 49. This is the first for the city of Henderson. It's a good thing here. So this is the change in the net pension liability related to TCRS. You can see last year you had a pension liability of $76,000. This year, for the first time, you've got a pension asset of $298,000. You will not see immediate benefits related to that. It isn't like TCRS calls you tomorrow and says you're going to have to make a payment. That's not what's happening, but it does provide opportunity that it might happen in the future. They're projecting this liability out over 25, 30, 35 years in some spots. So it's not that we can stop making contributions, it's just that that contribution rate is less likely to raise. On investments this year, rough calculation here, $525,000, it was the net investment income related to your asset. That's a return of about 5%. That's not bad with how COVID hit the world this year. But you can see how much 1% point or goes one way or the other. Look down at the bottom of the page. Under the discount rate, which means they're estimating that TCRS over the long term will make 7.25%. That's what the $298,000 asset is based on. If TCRS makes 8%, you got a $1.5 million asset. If it makes 6.25%, we got a $1 million liability. So historically, and you can see that if you look in, there's an 8-year comparison here and a few pages in the report. TCRS has historically made between 9 and 11% on an annual basis, and I would expect the 2021 assets to make that again. Page 55, that is the page I was speaking on a moment ago. Don't really have to discuss it because we just discussed the current year, but if you look down the middle of the page, you can see net pension liability where it started. The first year that pension was on your financial statements in 2014, $776,000 liability, and now we're at a $300,000 asset. So it's 1.1 million or so of a flip to the good over the last 7 years. Again, something to be proud of there. You can see the better page on page 73. If you ever need a page to look at the long-term debt of the city in a way that most of us want to look at, which is what changed this year, what payments did I make this year. This is a schedule of changes in long-term debt by the individual debt issues. You can see them spelled out, when they originated, when they expire, what our interest rate is on those long-term debt, and what the current year payments we made were. So total for the city, made $372,000 of debt payments this year, compared to $160,000 of new debt. Another page to be proud of here, page 77. This is our schedule of unaccounted for water. It's a required page by AWWA. I don't know, it's been in the state of Tennessee's report for going close to a decade. If it's not there yet, it's been a little bit now that they've used this new report. Y'all complete this information, or employees at the city complete this information. Talks about the amount of water lines we have, the amount of lost water we have. You can see a score down there at the bottom of the page, 89. I believe the highest I've ever seen is 91, so that's a really good score. There it just talks to how we're efficiently protecting our water supply there. As stated, you can see it a few different pages in the back. We've got no internal control findings this year, and I'm happy to take any questions that the board would have. I do want to point out one more thing. I'm sorry about that. General fund, you would be considered over budget if you did the entire fund to be over budget, okay? We would have plenty of cities that have function level, department level, other things that are way over budget but are made up for at a different department. If you look at the general fund budget, the actual statement, you don't have one function, you don't have one department that is over budget. That's an amazing thing, honestly. I looked today, and I actually went twice before I made that statement tonight to look this afternoon at your report again. Not one function, not one department is over budget this year. So that speaks to maintenance across the board, honestly, employee by employee. Happy to answer any questions if the mayor would have.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, Matt, appreciate it. I'd like to comment on Matt's here, thank you, sir. But Jim and Alicia and the department heads have done a great job. We have not had a finding since 2013. And I know when we all come, Jim he wears his back. But he doesn't, because maybe, Matt, you need to work hard to find one, that would got the same. But no, I have to admit, Jim, we're lucky, Alicia does a great job, and Jim, and the department heads do too, and I very much appreciate it. Like I say, we haven't had a finding since 2013, so I'm proud of that. Thank you. Thanks, man. Okay. Next item on the agenda is discuss, consider approval of additional sections of the fire department standard operating procedures, SOPs.
As you'll see in the packet, there's 3 listed here. There were going to be 4, but my fire chaplain had to have surgery. And we didn't get to that, but we're going to put those in the SOP. So this will be the last 3 SOPs until they get reviewed again next year. The first one is emergency communications instant command system SOP for on-scene communication and on-scene instant command system. The other one is fire scene, a real scratch surface of the block of the fire scene operations on structure fires and fires, emergency scenes of that nature. And then the last one is the infectious and blood-borne pathogens that goes along with what the city just gets a little bit deeper in our needs as far as PPE is concerned. All these have been reviewed by MTAS. Donald Panano, who's a new one, who's retired. We had to see him go, but he did a good job. So.
Can you point out
Yes.
the parts that have changed, I mean, when you read some meetings?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So what parts you?
on each of them, if you could just,
I'll
here's
just kind of
the,
just go over.
yeah,
Okay.
just what specifically
Are we-
did you change?
Well, these are new. We do not have these in the old ones.
There's dotted lines?
No, these are completely
Okay,
from scratch.
But you-
So,
you do have them approved though by
yes,
MTS?
yes.
Okay.
MTS looked them over, had so look at
Okay.
them. These are also, some of these have also been included in some other SOPs. We've tailored them to our specific.
Your own as well. Now, training, once they're all approved by us, how are you gonna communicate them?
These will be added to what they've already been given. We'll take a meeting night, when everybody comes in, we'll read over them. These are things we're doing anyway. We'll read over them, have them sign for it, they'll go into their already booklets that they have, and that's the way that they'll receive.
So I'm assuming that you already had some discussion with them
Well,
about.
we have in their booklets these policies that will be coming forward, but I was waiting for the board to okay them before we put them out to the rest of the group.
So you want us to approve
To approve these
tonight,
last 3,
but if during your training you see a need to augment it, then you would
There
come
will be-
back to us to.
yes, there will be a yearly review. We have to review these every year
Yes,
and add either stuff to this that we see that we have either forgotten or in the future some things, changes in our service. And so that's what we'll start doing. So we'll bring a review of the entire packet.
right. We've looked at it several times.
Any more questions?
Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion we approve 3 new SOPs for the fire department.
Have the motion to approve the 3 SOPs for the fire department. Do I have a second? Second. Have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, signify by no. Motion carries. Next item is discuss and approve the plan for final closure of the abandoned water well number 5. Darrell?
This is a well that's across the street from the water plant, it's sitting right behind the old Henderson home furnishings. That well was kept to do monitoring for the old service station, but I believe it was a well that earlier they had detected some contamination from the whole fuel system. There is a set of regulations and procedures to abandon the well. Reached out to a couple well companies, and to have this pump removed, everything taken out, it basically filled from the bottom to the top. It's a price of $12,060. Both companies are right at about exactly the same, pretty much price, and you know, probably this will take to where we could actually cut that off below grade, and once it's all said and done, we'll take the fence down and everything, and then whatever else there.
And they guarantee that'll secure no problem.
Right, they have to follow, very stringently follow state guidelines, and a licensed person has to be there, no licensed well driller has to be there and observe this activity that is being done to make sure it's done properly.
I make a motion that we move forward with getting that done. What's the time frame for that, you know?
Probably would be in about 3 weeks. They've got another project that they're on right now, and then about 3 weeks from now, they'll be able to get through this.
Have a motion for well, to close the well. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. All opposed signify by no. Motion carries. Next item is discuss sewer main issue, Paul Gray Hall on the corner of East Main and White Avenue there.
The Paul Gray Hall was built, it was built over top of the 8-inch wastewater line that drains a lot of Hill Avenue, 3rd Avenue, 4th on the east side. It all comes down. There's a lot of 2nd Street that comes into White Avenue, and at the almost the corner of the building on the kind of northwest side, that there's a manhole in the street. It takes a 45 and goes directly under pretty much the middle of that building to a manhole that sits in that wider curve sidewalk area out there in front of the church. And we've actually looked at the integrity of that pipe. There are some cracks, and there is points that it could be infiltration could get in and things. There's, you know, the pipe itself, we had JA come in and clean it, run a camera in it and look for spots, and we've got a couple of repair issues in that line where we'll have to dig up a spot, but all in all, it's in fairly decent shape. Looking at it, there would be really 2 options. One would be to basically replace that line, set another manhole out in the grass area, run down to the front of the building, set another manhole, and come back to the existing point that it goes in the sewer. All that's laid on grade. Not sure if we tried to relay it. There are a number of storm drains and various things that are going in and around that building, so there is likelihood that it would be a conflict if we actually tried to relay it. That would probably be the best, would be a good option. But one other option would be to go in and take a couple of spots of repair that we can get to and repair those 2 spots, and then actually put a liner in it. And, you know, I called 4 different companies, and, you know, got them a couple of different prices. 8-inch pipe, it might be a little bit different after they really look at it good. It looks like to replace that line would be somewhere around $34,000. To line it's going to be about $32,000, but you don't have to do any, you know, major digging or anything to do that. It's not an inexpensive process, but you know, I guess you look at the number of years that it has been under that building without any issues, and what they line it with. It comes with like a 30-year warranty, and it is as good as what the original pipe would. It'll be basically a plastic pipe inside the clay.
Okay, that means that pipe is almost 100 years old. Paul Gray was built in 1928, I think.
I think the sewer was 26 or somewhere thereabouts.
Wow. And it's still in fairly good shape.
little better. But nobody can dig into it. It had a building protector.
Well, that's a problem.
You think the liner would be okay?
I think the liners would be okay, and you know, we would have to spend probably quite a bit of money getting all that engineered and getting it to where we could go around. And if we did the survey, got the engineers involved and all of that, and if there was a conflict with storm drain or something else, you know, that we may not be able to even do it after we spent $8,000 to decide whether we could or not, so.
But with doing the liner,
Doing the liner, we just, you know, actually with this, I would want to get formal bids from 3 different companies and then move forward from that.
and if we dig up, you know, you always find more once you start digging.
It seems like since they are working on the building now, renovating, it would seem the ideal time to get that done. There's work going on anyway. So I would make a motion that we go with the liner or just repair the damage and authorize Darryl to get bids on the project so we move forward as quickly as possible.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by no. Motion carries. Item H, we like to commend the water plant staff on a perfect score of 100 on the recent sanitary survey by TDEC. You want to explain them what that entails?
About every 2 years, the Department of Environment, or it's actually the Division of Water Resources, an inspector comes down and they basically start with the source of supply. They look at the wells, how well they're being maintained, how well the well field itself is being maintained. They look at the, like your water plants, all your pieces of equipment, critical pieces of equipment, look at all your records, MORs, all that. They look at your cross connection program, make sure that you do have a working program and you're going out and requiring your businesses and things that are required to have a backflow, to actually have it checked at a certain interval that's in the ordinance. And then they look at, you know, I guess train, they look at the, how well you're maintaining compliance. We have to send samples to private laboratories to verify numbers we're getting on parameters like fluoride and other things, and they look at how closely your number is to that check labs number. And then they look at the, you know, every time you dig up a pipe and make a tap, you've got to flush that tap and, or service line, get a chlorine sample, so they're looking at where you've added, you know, like meters and things like that to make sure the proper procedures were followed. They look at your complaint file. If anybody ever calls and says my water's, you know, irony, dingy, whatever, you know, there's actually got to be a record of that, because somebody may have also called there. They may have one specific they're looking for, and if they had called, then they're going to make sure you have your record when they call you. And so then they look at water tanks and they look at pumping stations and any of the, look at, I guess, fire hydrant, you know, whether or not you're flushing those according to the regulations and things like that. So they did a pretty comprehensive review of the system and determined that we didn't have any deficiencies.
While you've got the floor, I know we talked last month about the engineer, getting an engineer to look at the sewer extension for West Main, for the hotel.
Yes, he's supposed to be here next week.
Okay, so you did hire, who is it, or?
We're using the same one GRW that did the North
Okay,
Avenue project.
okay, but he's supposed to be here next week.
Right.
Okay. And another thing we talked about was the equipment you needed, and we approved that, $12,459 to treat the lagoon discharge.
Right.
Did you get
We
that
did.
or order
We
it?
bought the tanks and the pumps and things, and we've got most of that up and running, and now, and we've also want to do some other things to make sure that we can stay in compliance. And primarily that was because of we had like a daily maximum amount of chlorine that we could add to the receiving stream, and now with the new permits, we have a monthly average that's about half of what the daily max was. So there's not, when we've tried to turn it down before, just to be, you know, you want to be as efficient as you can with your chemical fee because it's a cost. But when, you know, there's a certain level that you have to have it at or will violate our E. coli numbers. And so there's really no way to do that. And I think the state, I think they know that. They're trying to get the chlorine out of the environment.
Okay, great.
I had a question for Darrell, when it relates back to the well that we closed. I know when we closed landfill, we had monitoring for years, and we spent money going forward. Once we close this well number 5, are we done with it?
We're done with it. It'll be routed in, pumped in from the bottom up, so there won't be any way to sample or any way to have access.
We don't have to do another thing.
There won't be any way that any other contamination, if over the years that column pipe, casing pipe deteriorates, there's nothing that can get into that pop from that hole.
Chief?
We did our Shop of the Cop program on the 20th. We partnered with the sheriff's office, and we were able to provide Christmas for 38 kids, and it was very successful. That's all I have.
Yes, sir.
We didn't say anything about the CDG grant. I guess we don't know about that. There's a CDG grant that we'd like the board to allow us to start. I believe it's a 15% match to support the new plumber.
APG grant. Did we do it last week?
Huh?
We did talk about that.
Did we talk about
I
that?
think we did that. We didn't?
No, we haven't, remember, we gotta have a public hearing.
We could have a public hearing.
We get public input before our final decision is made and move forward.
Yeah, we talked about that to go with public hearing.
So actually, we're gonna have the public hearing on the CDB application in the February meeting, I think what we discussed.
Yes, we're gonna do it there.
And that gives us enough days to get it advertised. We gotta have, I think, basically 14 plus days, I think, to get it advertised. So next meeting, we'll have that public hearing. Somebody from Southwest Development will be here to explain the process. There is a greater opportunity this year than we've ever had to maybe apply for a fire engine. Because normally a lot of this money is used through CDBG for water and wastewater improvements. And guess what we've already talked about tonight is how much money is being dumped into water and wastewater. So they feel like there's going to be a whole lot of no more of the CDBG funds spent on community activities. I forget what they call it, community improvements or something. And fire trucks fall into that. And so we are looking seriously at that. There's a survey process that has to happen, and the fire department's taking that on and beginning that process already.
We've already got probably 100 surveys done.
What's 300?
We have to do 370, I think.
Yeah.
It needs a 15%.
Yes, 50% match.
So that's the process. So next meeting, we had it on this month's agenda, but we had to pull it back off because really we got to have this public hearing before we really specify where we're going. So that's the reason it got pulled off the agenda for this month. Yeah.
I just wanted you to be aware of that, it's already in the process.
Yeah. I was going to mention it when it came to me that it's coming next month.
Some of the ARP money, the 1.88, could be used for our 15%, correct?
Probably.
Yes, technically good.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why it couldn't, based on what we've been told.
Carter? You did talk to the people on the paving. They promised you. So we got to do after. We got to do last year's paving that you couldn't get to this year, they did all this summer. So he's both, I asked him to touch base with them to make sure we were still on their schedule. We were going to make sure we get
Now,
that
we're
done.
expecting really bad weather this weekend, so,
Supposed to be Sunday night,
yeah.
1 or 3 inches.
Be prepared. Prepare streets, sidewalks, whatever you can do. And of course, Darrell, I know you're watching. I wouldn't want to be on call this weekend.
Well, one thing that I think last year was last year the first year we had to use our plow. And it really made a difference on the streets. It really did make a difference. Jim?
Do want to mention that next Tuesday, the 18th, the park board is going to be meeting with Johnny Bailey with A2H to discuss the process of the master plan. Not really the plan per se. It's just to inform the board, the park board, what that process is and how we have to go about doing it to meet the regulations. Then after that meeting, there will be public meetings for public input on the master plan. So the board had asked to when that might happen, and so I went ahead and sent y'all emails to let y'all know, 6 o'clock Tuesday night. We'll have a classroom over here. So any board members that want to come, as I said, this is not really the public input meeting. Other wanted to come, you know, any meeting we have really is sort of open doors, but it's really not for public input. It is for the park board and the city board to understand the process and to guide her on what she needs to be doing to work toward a master plan. And then y'all, the park board will schedule the next meeting, which will be the public input meeting, to get public input on what the community needs from a park and rec standpoint.
Is that all, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Jerry?
No, sir.
Alicia?
While Leanne is here, I'd like to thank her and the rest of the utility department, the women in the office. We have been undergoing our new upgrade of our utility billing, and it has been a little difficult process, but thanks to their hard work and their due diligence, we're getting there. Still have some issues to work through, but I really want to thank them for all they've done to get us where we're at.
All the ladies over there have worked really hard on this conversion. It hadn't been easy. And they stepped up and they've done what needed to be do. And they're working through the issues with the software company, which has not been as helpful as I would like, but they are here. They've been here today again. They're supposed to be here again tomorrow. So, and these ladies are handling. So I'm staying out of it.
Again, I want to echo what said, welcome our leadership class for being here, and put a plug in with that. If you've not been through leadership Custer County, I strongly encourage you to do that. The other thing is a big congratulations and thank you to Jim, Alicia, and the department heads, and all the ladies that work in the clerk's offices for such a good audit in our big committee. So.
I will echo what Mark just said, both to the leadership of Chester County and to Jim. I think it's great that we haven't had, all the staff haven't had a finding since 2013. That says a lot. The fact that the department heads guard the money like it's their own. Really, no one department will. That says a lot, and I appreciate that. I want to commend the police department for their Christmas with a Cop, I think was the new title maybe, but since y'all didn't physically take them shopping, but Kendall with the paper, it was the best, I thought, coverage for the police department, positive, and I think it was, I want to commend everybody for that. I know we've got several people out with COVID. The office departments are understaffed. You got people doing things they don't normally do. Have trouble keeping patrol out. But you got how many officers out? 4?
Possibly more. I have to, it changes daily. We've got several out.
I know it affects all the departments, and like before, always, somehow y'all get the job done in spite of all the effects of COVID. And so my appreciation for that. One question for Jim was, it was back on the kind of the report for the, looking at the gas department. And, I mean, we're in the hole, $330-something thousand. Of course, we make it up in the cold weather, but then we got to pay for the last purchase. Are we cutting it close there?
This year, we're further behind than we normally are. Alicia and I have already discussed it, and we've talked about pulling some more records and looking at it a little closer, because normally by this time of year, we're doing better. We haven't broke even yet. Normally it's about January before we break even. But this year was unusually warm in December. Based on our natural gas nominations that we normally have to pull from storage, the month of December, we injected 14,000 decatherms. which is more than I injected in any one month for the whole entire year, even the summer season where I'm supposed to be injecting. So that tells you just how warm December was. Yeah, and how little gas got used, so, hopefully a little, don't want to beg for cold weather, but hopefully with colder January and February, we should come out of the hole and still be okay.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
You
we'll
think
see, we're gonna play it 30 days at a time, ask me next month, we'll see where we're at.
I'll make a note of that. That's all I have, Mayor. Sorry.
You fixing to get your weeds. I just echo everything that they said, and it is phenomenal, really, that every department is within budget. I mean, that is pretty amazing, but you're right, they guard that money, and I'm gonna tell you, Carter, you're tight. So tight. You need to spend a little bit more, actually.
I've never heard a board member say that.
I'm telling you, he is tight. I had to go to him and ask him to buy some stuff. Cost. Now, he treats it like it's his money, but good job.
Does anyone else like to address the board or anything else before we adjourn?
I would like to say that this mayor and board of aldermen have done a spectacular job on running the city of Henderson, and my hat is off to you. And I think the community really needs to know how hard you guys are working to make the government work efficient.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you.